with only 313 Muslims standing against an army of 4,000 Persian warriors. The odds seemed insurmountable. Yet this was the exact moment that would define the legacy of Abu Musa al-Ashari, a man whose faith and leadership would carve a path for the future of Islamic civilization. But how did an ordinary man rise to leadership in the face of such overwhelming odds? And what made his decisions resonate through history? The year was 633 CE, and the Muslim armies, under the command of Khalid ibn al-Walid, had just secured a decisive victory at the Battle of Ulay. The Persian forces, humiliated and fractured, had retreated to the city of Hira, a strategic stronghold in the region of Al-Iraq. The Muslims, though victorious, were vastly outnumbered and lacked the resources of the Persian Empire. The stakes were clear. Failure would mean the end of the nascent Islamic state's expansion, and success would open the gates to the heart of the Persian Empire. Abu Musa al-Ashari, a companion of the Prophet peace be upon him, had been tasked with a crucial mission: to lead a contingent of Muslims to secure the region of Bahrain. However, the path was fraught with challenges. The Persian army, though defeated, was regrouping, and the terrain was harsh and unfamiliar. Abu Musa, known for his wisdom and piety, understood the gravity of the task. As Ibn Kathir records in al-Bidaya wa al-Nihaya, Abu Musa gathered his men and reminded them of the Prophet's peace be upon him words: "A group of people from my nation will continue to fight for the truth, unharmed by those who oppose them, until the day of judgment." This reminder of their divine mission bolstered the morale of the Muslims. The strategic challenge was immense. The Muslims had to traverse the vast deserts of Al-Iraq, facing the risk of dehydration and exhaustion. The Persian forces, meanwhile, were entrenched in fortified cities, ready to strike back. Abu Musa's tactical reasoning was rooted in his deep faith and understanding of warfare. He chose to avoid direct confrontation with the larger Persian armies, opting instead for guerrilla tactics and swift movements. As Al-Tabari recorded in his Tarikh al-Rusul wa al-Muluk, Abu Musa's strategy was to strike fast and retreat swiftly, using the element of surprise to his advantage. However, the journey was not without its difficulties. As the Muslims advanced towards Bahrain, they faced a harsh drought. The scouts reported that the Persian forces had poisoned the wells along their route. According to Ibn al-Athir in al-Kamil fi al-Tarikh, Abu Musa paused, considering the dire situation. He called for a prayer, seeking guidance from Allah. In a moment of inspiration, he remembered a well hidden in the desert, known only to the locals. The Muslims found the well and were able to quench their thirst, renewing their strength and determination. The strategic payoff came when Abu Musa and his men reached Bahrain. The Persians, underestimating the resolve of the Muslims, were caught off guard. Abu Musa's forces quickly secured the city, leveraging their knowledge of the terrain and the element of surprise. The Muslims' victory in Bahrain was a testament to Abu Musa's leadership and strategic acumen. As Ibn Khaldun notes in Al-Muqaddimah, the fall of Bahrain marked a significant turning point in the early Islamic conquests, demonstrating the power of faith and unity in the face of adversity. Yet the story does not end here. As Abu Musa consolidated his gains in Bahrain, news reached him of a new threat. The Persian Empire, backed by the Byzantine forces, was amassing a new army to reclaim their lost territories. The letter that arrived that night would change everything, setting the stage for the next chapter in the saga of Abu Musa al-Ashari. 3,000 Muslims faced an army of 200,000 Romans, and yet, by the end of the day, it was the Byzantines who would retreat, not the believers. In the scorching heat of Muta, a decision was made that would echo through the ages. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had sent a delegation to demand the release of captives taken by the Byzantines. But this was no mere diplomatic mission. It was a test of faith, a trial by fire. The stakes were clear. A defeat here would not only mean the loss of precious lives, but would also send a message of weakness to the surrounding tribes and empires. The very survival of the Muslim community in Medina and their expanding influence in the Arabian Peninsula hung in the balance. The Byzantine Empire, with its vast resources and seasoned military, was a force to be reckoned with. Their conquests stretched from the Levant to Anatolia, and their armies were known for their discipline and tactical prowess. The mission was led by Zayd ibn Haritha, a remarkable warrior who had been a slave before the Prophet, peace be upon him, freed him. Zayd was a man of unshakable faith, a companion of the Prophet, and a leader whose courage was as legendary as his loyalty. With him were Ja'far ibn Abi Talib and Abdullah ibn Rawaha. These three men were the pillars of the Muslim delegation, and their presence was a testament to the seriousness of the endeavor. However, it would be Abu Musa al-Ashari, a Sahabi who had been known for his poetic skills, who would emerge as a key figure in this battle. As Al-Tabari recorded in his Tarikh, the Muslim force consisted of 3,000 warriors, a small number compared to the colossal Byzantine army that awaited them. The terrain was harsh, the land arid and unforgiving. The battlefield was situated in the region of Mutta, near the modern-day border of Jordan and Syria. The Muslims were outnumbered, but they were not outmatched. Their faith, their unity, and their strategic brilliance would be their weapons. The Byzantine army, under the command of the Roman governor of Syria, Heraclius, was a formidable force. Ibn al-Athir notes that they had assembled an army of 200,000 soldiers, a number that dwarfed the Muslim contingent. The Romans were equipped with the latest military technology, including heavily armored cavalry and skilled archers. Their strategy was to overwhelm the Muslims with sheer numbers and superior firepower. Abu Musa al-Ashari, despite his lack of formal military training, demonstrated a keen understanding of tactics and strategy. He knew that a direct confrontation would be suicide. Instead, he proposed a plan to use the terrain to their advantage. The Muslims would utilize hit-and-run tactics, exploiting the rugged landscape to wear down the enemy. They would engage in guerrilla warfare, striking quickly and retreating before the Romans could mount a counterattack. The first wave of the Byzantine assault was fierce. The Romans, confident in their numbers, charged with reckless abandon. But the Muslims, led by Zayd ibn Haritha, held their ground. Zayd was the first to fall, struck down by an enemy arrow. Ja'far ibn Abi Talib took command, rallying the troops with a speech that spoke to their faith and their duty. He too was martyred in a heroic last stand, where he fought until he lost both hands and was struck down. Abdullah ibn Rawaha, the third commander, took up the mantle. He fought bravely, but the sheer weight of the Byzantine numbers began to tell. The Muslims were pushed back, their lines threatened with collapse. It was at this moment that Abu Musa al-Ashari stepped forward. He took command of the remaining forces, his voice steady and his resolve unshaken. He ordered a strategic retreat, drawing the Byzantines into a carefully planned ambush. The Romans, elated by what they perceived as a victory, pursued the Muslims with gusto. But as they entered the narrow gorge, the Muslims sprang their trap. Arrows rained down from the cliffs, and hidden warriors emerged to strike at the enemy's flanks. The Byzantines, caught off guard, began to falter. Their one-sworded ranks descended into chaos, and their numerical advantage became a liability as they struggled to maneuver in the confined space. The battle raged for hours, but the tide had turned. The Byzantines, despite their initial advantage, were forced to retreat. The Muslims, though vastly outnumbered, had demonstrated a level of tactical brilliance and courage that would be remembered for generations. The field was littered with the bodies of the enemy, a testament to the Muslims' resilience and faith. As the sun set on the battlefield, the surviving Muslims gathered to pray for their fallen comrades. The loss of Zayd, Jafar, and Abdullah was a profound blow, but their sacrifice had not been in vain. The Battle of Mu'tah, though technically a tactical withdrawal, was a strategic victory. It proved that the Muslims could stand against the might of the Byzantine Empire and emerge victorious. The message was clear. The faith of Islam was not to be underestimated. But the battle was far from over. As the Muslims regrouped and tended to their wounded, a new threat loomed on the horizon. Reports came in of another Byzantine army marching towards them, its numbers even greater than the last. The Romans were not done, and neither were the Muslims. The stage was set for another clash, one that would test the limits of their faith and their resolve. In the year 8 AH, the Islamic world stood at a crossroads. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had dispatched an army of 3,000 men towards the Roman stronghold of Mu'tah. Among them was a young man named Abu Musa al-Ashari, his heart aflame with the zeal of newfound faith. The Romans, with their vast resources and battle-hardened legions, had mustered a force of 200,000 to defend their territory. The odds were staggering, yet the Muslims marched forward, driven by an unyielding conviction in their cause. As Ibn al-Athir recorded in al-Kamil fi al-Tarikh, the Romans had fortified the region of Balka, a strategic area in modern-day Jordan, with the intent of cutting off Muslim advances. The Muslim army, led by the brave Zayd ibn Haritha, Jafar ibn Abi Talib, and Abdullah ibn Rawaha, faced a daunting task. The terrain was unfamiliar, the enemy numbers overwhelming, and the distance from Medina vast. The stakes were clear failure, meant the retreat of Muslim influence from these newly conquered regions, and success meant the expansion of the Islamic State into Roman territory. Abu Musa al-Ashari, with his keen strategic mind and unwavering courage, found himself at the heart of these events. He had proven his mettle in the Battle of Ulay and the subsequent mission to Bahrain, where he had demonstrated not only his military prowess, but also his ability to unite and lead men. Now, as part of the vanguard against the Romans, Abu Musa was once again called upon to face a challenge that tested the limits of his faith and fortitude. The Roman forces had dug in at Balka, a region characterized by its rugged terrain and fortified positions. The Muslim army, though vastly outnumbered, was composed of men who had pledged their lives to the cause of Allah. Abu Musa, along with his comrades, was tasked with breaching the Roman defenses. The strategy was clear: engage the enemy in hit-and-run tactics, weaken their resolve, and create an opening for a larger assault. As Al-Tabari reports in his Tarikh al-Rusul wa al-Muluk, the Roman commanders had underestimated the resolve of the Muslim forces. They believed that sheer numbers and superior equipment would be enough to repel the invading army. However, Abu Musa and his men were not deterred. They moved swiftly, striking at weak points in the Roman lines and retreating before the enemy could launch a counterattack. The Romans, frustrated by their inability to engage the Muslims in a decisive battle, began to lose confidence. Yet the battle was far from over. The Romans, realizing the futility of their current strategy, decided to lure the Muslims into a trap. They feigned retreat, drawing the Muslim forces into a narrow valley where they could be surrounded and annihilated. According to Al-Tabari, Abu Musa paused. The scouts reported that the Romans were massing their forces in the valley, ready to strike. The situation was precarious. Any misstep could lead to disaster. Abu Musa, ever the tactician, saw through the Roman ruse. He ordered his men to halt their advance and regroup. Instead of charging headlong into the trap, he decided to flank the Roman forces, using the rugged terrain to his advantage. The Muslims moved silently through the mountains, avoiding the main Roman army and striking at their supply lines. The Romans, caught off guard by this unexpected maneuver, found themselves isolated and vulnerable. The battle that followed was a testament to the strategic genius of Abu Musa al-Ashari. As Ibn al-Athir notes, the Muslims, though outnumbered, used their knowledge of the terrain and their superior tactics to outmaneuver the Romans. The Roman forces, unable to adapt to the changing dynamics of the battle, began to falter. Their supply lines cut off, their morale shattered. The Romans were forced to retreat, leaving the field to the Muslims. Yet the victory was not without its challenges. The Muslims had suffered heavy losses, and the Romans, though defeated, were far from broken. Abu Musa, ever the realist, knew that the struggle was far from over. As he surveyed the battlefield, he received a letter that would change everything. The letter spoke of a new threat, a new army marching towards the Muslim heartland. The struggle for the future of the Islamic world was far from over. With 6,000 Muslim warriors against 120,000 Roman soldiers, Abu Musa al-Ashari knew that the fate of Damascus rested on his next move. The city, a jewel of the Levant, stood as the last major Roman stronghold in Syria. Its capture would open the gates of the entire region to the expanding Muslim state. Failure meant a devastating setback for the growing caliphate. As Ibn al-Athir recorded in Al-Kamil fi al-Tarikh, the Roman general Theodoros and his forces had fortified the city, preparing for a siege. The Muslims, having secured key victories in the surrounding regions, now faced the monumental task of breaching the impregnable walls of Damascus. The city's defenses were formidable, and the Romans, under the command of Theodoros, boasted a massive army of 120,000 soldiers, including elite cavalry and archers. The Muslims, though fewer in number, were seasoned warriors, their spirits ignited by the faith that bound them together. Abu Musa al-Ashari, a companion of the Prophet peace be upon him, was known for his strategic acumen and unwavering faith. Having previously secured Bahrain and participated in the Battle of Mu'tah, he was no stranger to the challenges of warfare. However, the siege of Damascus presented a unique set of obstacles. The city's high walls and well-supplied garrison made a direct assault nearly suicidal. Abu Musa recognized the need for a different approach. As Al-Tabari reported in his Tarikh al-Rusul wa al-Muluk, Abu Musa devised a plan to split the Roman army, thereby reducing their numerical advantage. He ordered his men to partition into two groups. One would engage the Romans in a fierce battle on the outskirts of the city, while the other would stealthily infiltrate the city through a secret route revealed by local sympathizers. This tactic aimed to create confusion and divide the Roman forces, making them vulnerable to a coordinated attack. The plan was executed with precision. The first group of Muslims, led by Abu Musa himself, launched a daring assault on the Roman outposts, drawing the attention of Theodoros and his main force. Meanwhile, the second group, led by Khalid ibn al-Walid's trusted general, Shurabil ibn Hassana, infiltrated the city through a hidden passageway. The element of surprise was crucial, and it worked flawlessly. The Romans, caught off guard, found themselves fighting on two fronts. However, the situation was not without its challenges. As Ibn Kathir noted in al-Bidaya wa al-Nihaya, The Romans, despite their initial confusion, regrouped and launched a fierce counterattack. The Muslim infiltrators found themselves surrounded in the narrow streets of Damascus. Abu Musa, realizing the gravity of the situation, made a critical decision. He ordered a retreat, consolidating his forces to avoid being overwhelmed. This tactical withdrawal was a testament to his leadership and wisdom, prioritizing the preservation of his men over immediate gains. The crisis, however, was far from over. The Romans, emboldened by their temporary success, prepared for a decisive battle. Abu Musa, undeterred, sought counsel with his commanders. It was during this time that a secret meeting took place, one that would shape the future of the siege. As Ibn al-Athir recorded, Abu Musa met with Khalid ibn al-Walid, who had recently arrived with reinforcements. Together, they devised a new strategy, one that would turn the tide of the battle. The resolution came with the arrival of Khalid ibn al-Walid's reinforcements. With fresh troops and renewed vigor, the Muslims launched a coordinated attack on the Romans. The Romans, already stretched thin, were unable to withstand the combined assault. The Muslim forces breached the city's defenses, leading to a series of decisive victories that culminated in the surrender of Damascus. But the victory was not without its costs. As the Muslims celebrated their triumph, news arrived of a new threat on the horizon. The Roman Empire, though weakened, was far from defeated. The letter that arrived that night would change everything, for it spoke of a new army marching towards Damascus, eager to avenge the fall of the city. The Muslims, though victorious, knew that their struggle was far from over. With only 4,000 men facing an opposing force reported at 40,000, Abu Musa al-Ashari, radiallahu anhu, and his companions had but one clear objective: to win Damascus not by slaughter, but by securing it for the Ummah with justice and mercy. As Al-Tabari reports in his Tarikh, the Muslim commanders were painfully aware of the imbalance in numbers and the strategic vulnerability that entailed. Ibn al-Athir likewise records the startling figures that framed every council and every march that followed. If they failed to take Damascus, or if they took it by massacre, the consequences were ruinous. Damascus was the linchpin of Syria. Its fields in the Ghouta fed the cities, the Barada River irrigated orchards, and the road network linked Antioch, Hims, and Jerusalem. A failure would mean a resurgent Byzantine field army converging upon a fractured Muslim force, the loss of legitimacy among the local population, and the stain of wanton bloodshed on the nascent Islamic polity. The stakes were not merely military, they were moral and political. Ibn Kathir emphasizes that the companions understood conquest as ammon and stewardship, not mere spoils. The geography sharpened the dilemma. Damascus lay cradled in the Barada Valley beneath Mount Cassian, the orchards of the Ghouta wrapping the city like a green belt. Its walls were long and punctuated by many gates. Its approach roads allowed defenders to move within the city and threaten besieging forces. Around Damascus, the Byzantine Empire still fielded large forces across Hims and the plains of the Balka, and garrisons in nearby towns could converge swiftly. Al-Tabari notes the presence of large Byzantine bodies in the region, what the historians record as an aggregate strength, vastly outnumbering the Muslim detachments. Abu Musa's tactical reasoning was born of piety and prudence. Ibn al-Athir records that the Muslim commanders, recognizing their small numbers, preferred negotiation where honor allowed. A direct assault might win the walls but would consume men, invite Byzantine reinforcements, and leave a shattered city that would fester with rebellion. Abu Musa knew that the best fortress for Islam in Syria was the hearts of its people. The shortest road to that was justice in victory. Thus, rather than throw his men against stone and spear, he chose the path of Ammon. Security offered in return for submission and a fair settlement. Ibn Kathir affirms that this aimed to secure lives, properties, and the freedom of worship for the people of the book guided the companions who negotiated terms. Tension rose as envoys passed between the Muslim lines and the city. Muslim scouts reported concentrations of Byzantine troops in the surrounding plains, numbers in the tens of thousands, according to the chroniclers. Within the city, the governor and leading citizens debated their options. Some Byzantine officers counseled resistance to buy time for relief forces. Others counseled parley. In the Muslim camp, some young warriors, eager for glory, urged an immediate assault. Abu Musa felt the pull between zeal and wisdom. Ibn al-Athir records these counsels and the weight they carried. A commander must weigh the impulse of the moment against the long-term welfare of the Ummah. In a moment that reveals the human side of the companion, a crisis of conscience and command came to the fore. Al-Tabari recounts that Abu Musa deliberated deeply, consulting with his fellow commanders and praying for guidance. The scouts brought word that an additional Byzantine detachment might be marching from the north. An assault would risk being cut off. Yet to negotiate was to show restraint in the face of an enemy that had long lorded it over Syria. Abu Musa's sleep was broken by the silence of the camp and by the whisper of the Barada. The men around him saw not only a general, but a man who feared Allah, who felt the responsibility of blood and the sanctity of oaths. In 635 CE, with only 4,000 warriors under his command, Abu Musa al-Ashari faced an impossible task: the conquest of Fahl, a fortified Byzantine stronghold in the region of Palestine. The Roman Empire, though retreating, had not yet surrendered its grip on the lands of the Levant. The city of Fahl, with its towering walls and strategic position, was a critical target. If Abu Musa failed, the momentum of the Muslim conquest could be halted, allowing the Byzantines to regroup and strike back. The stakes were clear. The future of Islamic expansion in Syria hung in the balance. Fahl was no ordinary city. It stood as a bulwark of Byzantine resistance, its walls thick and high, designed to withstand sieges. The city was well supplied, its garrison determined, and its people determined to fight. According to Ibn al-Athir in Al-Kamil fi al-Tarikh, Abu Musa understood that a direct assault would be suicidal. He needed a strategy that would force the city to surrender without a protracted and bloody battle. His answer lay not in brute force, but in cunning and patience. Abu Musa's forces were small, but they were composed of battle-hardened veterans who had fought alongside the greatest commanders of the day. They had seen victory at the Battle of Balka and the siege of Damascus, and they were not easily deterred. Yet even the bravest warriors could not scale the walls of Fahl without support. Abu Musa knew that he needed to weaken the city's resolve, to make its defenders question the wisdom of holding out. His plan was simple but effective. He would surround the city, cut off all supplies, and wait. Hunger and thirst would do what swords and arrows could not. For weeks, Abu Musa's forces encircled Fahl, blocking every route in or out. The city's supplies dwindled, and the garrison grew increasingly desperate. Ibn Kathir, in al-Bidaya wa al-Nihaya, records that Abu Musa sent messengers to the city's leadership, offering terms of surrender that would spare the lives of its inhabitants. The Byzantines, however, refused to yield. They believed that reinforcements would come, that the Muslims would eventually tire and retreat. But Abu Musa was not a man to be swayed by empty promises. He held firm, his resolve unwavering. As the days turned into weeks, the situation inside Fahl grew dire. The people of the city, once defiant, began to whisper among themselves. Why should they die for a cause that seemed increasingly hopeless? The garrison, though still loyal to their commanders, could feel the tide of opinion turning. The walls of Fahl were strong, but they could not protect the people from starvation. The city was on the brink of collapse, and Abu Musa knew it. According to al-Tabari in al-Tarikh, al-Rusul wa al-Muluk, it was at this moment that Abu Musa made his final move. He ordered his men to intensify the blockade, to ensure that not a single grain of wheat or drop of water entered the city. He also sent out scouts to report on any signs of approaching relief forces. The scouts returned with good news. No army was coming to Fahl's aid. The Byzantines were focused on defending their remaining strongholds, and Fahl had been forgotten. With no hope of rescue and their supplies nearly exhausted, the defenders of Fahl finally surrendered. The city's gates were opened, and Abu Musa's forces entered without resistance. The conquest of Fahl was complete, and the Muslim hold on the region of Palestine was secured. The people of the city were given the choice to convert to Islam, pay the jizya, or leave in peace. Many chose to remain, recognizing the justice and mercy of the new rulers. Yet even as Abu Musa celebrated this victory, a new challenge loomed on the horizon. The conquest of Fahl was but one step in the ongoing struggle against the Byzantine Empire. Rumors had reached him of a large Byzantine army massing to the north, preparing to retake the lost cities and drive the Muslims back. The walls of Fahl had fallen, but the war was far from over. Abu Musa knew that he would need to be ready, for the fight for Syria was only beginning.